So, how many times have you found yourself in an uncertain space in life, not really sure like what the next step is, or you've been waiting for a while for the next step to present itself and you're getting a little frustrated because it's not happening? And you're just feeling like you're in that place where you could really start to spiral down in your own negative, self limiting beliefs. Been there? I know I have. And I was just having coffee with a really good friend of mine who I haven't had on the podcast yet about this topic matter. In fact, she showed up as my Shiro in this moment and really coached me through what she thought would help me as a way to kind of be in this uncertain space. And as we started talking about it, and we started talking about how many times we've been there before, we decided, you know what? I think you could be helped by this conversation. I wish you could have sat at the table with she and I. And so we're hoping today that on the podcast we can recreate that wisdom because she really guided me. So keep listening if you want to get a little bit of her coaching spirit behind you if you're finding yourself in these uncertain times.
I know your deep, dark secret. You don't like your life. You're a woman in midlife, and for the past 2 decades or more, you've poured yourself in to other people. You've poured yourself into your career, your family, and yet on the inside, you feel broken. And that's no way to be. I'm Dr. Natalie Marr. I'm a clinical psychologist and a life transition expert. It wasn't too long ago that I was in your shoes, waking up in my early 40s thinking I've got 2 failed marriages and I'm a single mom for the second time in my life. And I just knew that I could do better, that I could feel better. Fortunately for you, I have about 20 years experience clinically. And so I've created a method that will help you learn to love your story. I know that the story that you're telling yourself about your life feels awful. And I know that you think that you can't change that. I assure you, you can. And when we work together, I'm going to help you to craft a different story, a story that you love, a story that makes you want to get up every single day. Let's work together to help you love your story.
All right, so I'm interrupting this podcast for one reason only. Let me just ask this question. Are you feeling stuck? Are you feeling kind of blah about your life? You're a woman in midlife, and life is pretty good. I mean, you've got your stuff together, you've ticked all the boxes, but you just don't feel like you're stepping into your prime in the way that you'd really like to. And you certainly don't want to go down the road of having a midlife crisis in order to figure all of this out. So if that's you, then my 20-week group coaching program is for you. And guess what? I'm opening it up in 2024. So that's why I'm interrupting this podcast today, because I want to personally invite you to participate in this with me. Now, 20 weeks seems like a big commitment. I get it. But I'm here to help you in 2024. I want you to reach your goals. I want you to really design the life that you want to be living. That is my passion. And it's what the 20-week program does. And don't just believe me. Here, I want you to listen to some of the testimonials of other women who have been through this program.
To go through an actual curriculum of videos and thoughtful process of meditation and self-awareness and giving myself self-compassion. And also, probably the biggest thing I gained from this was I now have self-respect. I don't feel that I need to be that person for everybody else. And I can take care of me and not feel guilty. And I can look back at my story and not feel guilty.
Just the self-awareness, the self-acceptance. And I really found the curriculum incredibly helpful for guiding me through that process.
I learned how to speak my truth. I learned how to listen to myself, and I learned how to, in a confrontational situation or a painful situation, take care of my needs.
It just opened up some doors for me to see things more clearly and respect myself more.
Now, doesn't that sound like something that you want to be doing? Now, remember, go to learntoloveyourstory.com right now, and you too can sign up for your complimentary call with me. All you have to do is click on Work with Me and book that complimentary call. Or you can head over to resources and read a little bit more about the various programs that I have. I can't wait to have you be part of this in 2024. So, Happy New Year to you, and let's get you into that centered life thriving. All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. I am really excited because today I have a friend with us here on the podcast. And as I told you in my little intro, she and I had been sitting down for coffee, and she was helping navigate me through an uncertain time really well. And I was like, oh my gosh, it would be nice if my listeners were here hearing this. So we're going to try to recreate that conversation, or at least the details that we think could be really useful to you, my listeners, in our conversation today. But without further ado, let me introduce you to my friend, Lisa Kindle. Lisa has led an expansive and creative professional career that includes a tenure in graphic design, advertising, and business consulting. Lisa brings a lively and out-of-the-box energy to businesses and organizations that bring life to their vision. Lisa Kindle has created not only the colorful color affirmation deck, which I was trained in, and all the associated coaching programs that go with that, but also a series of experiences that teach people how to engage in art making for wellness. These therapeutic art exercises, workshops, and retreats have transformed numerous lives over the past few years. Transformations include a renewed sense of purpose, a stronger voice, more confidence, and met goals. So welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. My first question for all my guests is, tell us your story. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, last week when I think it was last week when we had this conversation, we're going to kind of rehash. We were sitting in Anoka, Minnesota, where I grew up, only a few blocks from the house, actually probably only a couple of blocks from the house I grew up in. After moving to Tucson, Arizona a year ago with my husband for his job, and we started an art and wellness retreat center here, which is part of my story. So when I grew up in Anoka, I was always creative. I was surrounded by women who encouraged and mentored me all through my childhood up and until my adult life, through many things. One thing a lot of people don't, either you know me as a cellist or you know me as an artist or graphic designer. Those are like the two things, my two lifetimes. And hopefully, in busyness of life, one always gets left behind. And unfortunately, the appendage of my cello never leaves me mentally, but I have not been as active as I would have liked many of the years. So that's a part of me that's always there, the musician, and the discipline from that. And then went through life just very quickly. Let's just say I've experienced divorce more than once. And
we know nothing of that on this show at all. We know nothing.
I don't think any woman out there can relate to me at all.
None of us.
Parenting from the time my daughter was 7, bankruptcy, running my own business as a single parent. I have worked in corporate America. I'm tenured from 2 different positions I held early on in my career, which allowed me to continue to be freelancing and run my own business over the years, raising my daughter, which I'm probably the most proud of. That now that she's a successful adult right now, going to college, finishing a 4-year degree, and dabbling. In fact, today I'm going to be talking to her, training her a little bit in some design work.
Fun.
Life does come full circle if you let it.
Yes, it can. It definitely can.
Right? So, we got through all that. She graduated from high school. Now she's in college, flying free, so to speak, living in Anoka, where I grew up, again, full circle. So it was really a great trip back to visit recently. But over the past few years, through the pandemic. And a little bit before that, we had a health crisis with my daughter before all the changes started. And that's what really brought me on this path through her health issue. I was still single parenting. Life was really difficult. And yet I needed to focus all my energy on her. And so while I was running my own business, I lost the drive to hustle at that point because I needed to mentally, emotionally, physically be there for her. And so I started working for other people quite a bit more, took a job, and left the graphic design hustle, so to speak, behind. We did a lot about that, and started creating things like vision board workshops and different kind of abundance and wellness days. I lived in White Bear Lake, Minnesota at the time, and I started working at Create Space part-time and used their space to do manifesting abundance, manifesting love, and really delved into that. And then in 2019, got remarried. My daughter went to college, and then went through the pandemic. I started really diving deeper into it, got a certification in art therapy, therapeutic art. I'm not an art therapist. I always say I'm not. Right. Natalie and I, this is why Natalie and I really, I love this partnership because he has the license to coach, and not just coach, but to
counsel. I mean, really, it's for counseling. I've never done certification. I could in coaching, but I figure I've kind of done that. I don't know.
Yeah, you've done that. So I've done the other side where I kind of want to bridge the gap. And I always tell my clients I'm not a licensed therapist. Although I most recently did go through a course on wellness counseling with Cornell University, fairly reputable organization. And then I have a certificate in therapeutic art. And of course, having worked as a graphic designer, having had my own business for nearly 20 years, I still do some freelance, but mostly I'm focused on creating my products, helping women, providing experiences for people. I have coached men. In fact, Dean and I, my husband and I, had a conversation with a man who was part of a family that stayed at Soul Quest Retreat over the winter last year. And it has transformed his life. And you can see the family's video on our website, actually. And it's very humbling.
That's neat.
To have these conversations and know that he's now one of our biggest supporters, and that we've impacted his life to the extent that he's now trying to build a labyrinth. I'm going to get him on the accountable here, but he's talking about building a labyrinth on Summit Avenue for during during the winter festival there.
Oh, really? Ooh,
I know. So
that's a cool idea. I'll keep it on the down low as much as this is the down low, but yeah, okay.
Down low, because he's been so inspired by our labyrinth and what he learned by that process. So in Tucson, I've really upped my game. So during the pandemic, I was going to say, I started a weekly meeting called the Global Art Cafe, which originated as an art coffee at the Maple Grove Art Center. But very quickly, we ended up in this situation where everybody was at home. And so I moved the art coffee home and called it the Global Art Cafe. We met every week on Friday, and we do have members from all over the globe. I met and interviewed many, many people. We did, lives from France. We had
that's so neat. Oh my gosh.
From India. We've had, Japan, all over the world, literally. And I did that for 2 years, did a weekly meeting. And then I started doing a podcast during that because I was having such great conversations.
Yes.
I
know how that goes.
Right? So I consider myself a very high level connector of people. And I like to support women especially, but also men, when I can, anybody that's in small business. And so part of my vision with the podcast was to help connect others to the businesses they serve and the people they serve, and to bring more peace and well-being into the world and an awareness around mental health. But when we moved to Tucson last year, I took a little break from that to really focus on building the business here. And I am now about to announce my 4th printing of my deck, because I am making some changes since we chatted even about it.
Oh, really? Oh, I'm excited.
Like little ones, but every time it just gets a little better.
It's such a great deck. It really is. It's such a great deck.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm going to put a plug, and we'll make sure in the notes that there are connections if you want to order one for yourself. But it's great for you to use on a personal level. It's also great for you to, use if you, learn the process of how you can help others create their own version of the deck.
And of course, I love it that a licensed psychologist uses it in her practice. And that's one person that I look for, is a licensed practitioner, coach, therapist of any kind, like Natalie, who would like to use it in their practice. I would love to, of course, train them as well. But that being said, yes, I do have a little new twist that's going to come in the new deck, some little edits. Then there will also be a journal, which Natalie so graciously proofed through, but it's going to change just a titch.
Okay.
To include my entire practice, my whole entire coaching practice, so that people can buy it as a companion to the coaching process. They could do it on their own, or they could work with me, obviously. So we'll have the journal.
That's a great idea.
Thank you.
To use it that way.
Right? So we'll have the updated deck, a very large journal with lots of goodies and all the exercises that really focuses on wholeness with colors as your anchor. And then I plan to release a planner for 2024, but it will be undated, so you can use it anytime and keep using it if you get lazy, because I know I do. A couple of months in, you're like, life gets busy. But
I have this gorgeous, very colorful planner that I used for about 4 months last year, and then it stopped. I don't know. It just it just happens.
Right.
I love them, and then I just can't. The atomic habits of layering that into my daily just never seems to solidify the way that I want it to. Say love you.
Yes. So that will help people to understand. I've also been writing a column in the local community, the Vale Voice. It's called Creativity Meets Wellness, and it's really brought to my attention, like, people need more information on how can I easily incorporate a wellness practice from my perspective that is art like this process of making art. And what I always say is, just like wellness, the process of art does not have to be fine art or art with a capital A. It's just the process of doing the work, putting the pen to paper, the paintbrush on paper. It doesn't have to create anything recognizable. It needs to express what you're feeling, your emotions, and allow you to get out your anxiety. And so that's really the root of what I want people to get out of it, is that this practice allows you to stop a moment to reflect, rest, and recharge. So deck, guidebook, journal, planner, and also the most exciting, it's going to be digital. It's going to be digital. And I think it's going to be digital maybe by the beginning of December. So,
oh my goodness. Wow.
So exciting things for the holidays. I can't even stand it. So as soon as I get links, obviously I'll start sharing them.
Yes.
But I got to get back to Tucson where my actual desktop is.
It's hard to be living in more than one space. So your story is a circuitous route to where you are present day, but you also, like, it sounds like that's kind of part of your out of the box way of being, is that you're always kind of on your own divergent path on your way to greater purpose anyway. So it all kind of fits together in some colorful way for you. Well,
I think probably part of my success, if you want to call it that, or survival, I don't know. Let's go with success.
We'll say success, yes.
Yeah, the key word many people will tell you is I have a strong sense of perseverance along with responsibility And as I go through times that are, let's say, challenging, less than optimal, I find a way to navigate those. And right now we're in kind of that in between that we talked about, and that we're going to bring up here is we found ourselves in this situation we never expected to be in, health wise. And it's time will tell. Time will reveal what is meant to be. And it's taken a long time to get to that place. And that's where I think I'll let you go on with the conversation there, because that brings us to where we're kind of at right now.
Yeah. Well, what's so funny is, so you were in town and I wanted to get to see you in person. So we did this coffee, and, kind of in my mind when we were scheduling it, I'm like, okay, Lisa's been through a lot of uncertain times in this past year, and I'll, we'll get together, we'll talk about stuff. I mean, it's usually business related or at least adjacent. And I'm like, and maybe I can pump her up a little. And the day that I showed up was not my best moment. I was in uncertain times, but the conversation was really lovely. You did a really good job, because you're a coach, of continuing to kind of come back to, let's stay on the path though. Like, what do you want to accomplish with this business, and what are you doing? And is that in alignment with that? Or are there things that can shift from that? And so helping kind of bring me back into my own confidence with it, because you were like narrowing the conversation down to what's the purpose, and what are the things that you're doing that seem to be in alignment with that purpose. But, my question to you is, what are some things that really you think out of that conversation were really useful and made you think, gosh, this could be really a podcast too, because I think other people could use hearing some of this?
Well, I think it was the business side, but without revealing too much, I think, let's just say being a single parent is a lot.
Yeah.
And it adds a layer, whether unspoken or not. I happen to know that you're in that stage.
Yes.
And so I can bring a perspective. And even I have a new client who's been married 30 years. I have friends that have been married over 30 years. Whether you're a single parent or a long-term marriage, I do have that perspective that I can shed light on. Now having an adult daughter, there are good times and bad times, but same in business. So I think, that being said, this is not just a simple issue, and I recognize that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I so value, having those conversations with you, because I know that you have that unique perspective. And for me, as a single parent and an entrepreneur, the hustle culture really can suck us in to trying to hustle for worthiness instead of just hustling to pour into our purpose with our businesses. Right. And I think that you were really helping me to kind of narrow my focus and get out of the hustle culture and if I was putting work into something, that it should really be still in alignment with what the purpose of the business was, which was really quite lovely to have somebody that really can understand how detrimental that can be when you get into that trap, right? And it's just normal. We all get into that trap sometimes. But it can be really detrimental when you're in that space, in that headspace, for sure.
You kind of get stuck in it. I think there's this sense of, we should be doing this. We have to do this to equal this result. And you brought up Atomic Habits just a bit ago. I heard you. And layering and stacking activities. And that's actually what I teach, without saying that, with my creative wellness.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more within this, I think. And that's where, as a psychologist, you can really help people navigate making choices, but it's hard when you're in the middle of it.
It is. It's hard. What do you think for you inspired you to want to work with women in this group? I mean, and you work with men as well, right? But it's for me that, it's mostly midlife women that I'm focusing in on. And so what do you think inspired you to want to be helpful to people who, when they find themselves in this pocket?
Although before we go on to women, I will say I have worked with men, and You know what? The men that I've known and worked with in this area, it takes a lot of guts for the man to stand up. So I just want to give them a shout out. They know who they
Yeah.
are. To
Yeah.
have the courage to say, hey, I don't like the way my life is going and I need some help. So
Mm-hmm.
I support you also. Let's just have that on the table from my perspective. And it's
Yeah.
when those men it's very touching to know that they've trusted me to help them. So with that being said, most of my clients, yes, are women, and that's why we came together, because we have a passion to support people. Why? That's easy. Because I've been through a lot. I've been through a
Yeah.
lot of times as a woman, both career wise, personally, where I did not feel supported. Did not feel supported at all and lacked resources. And you and I have
Mm-hmm.
talked about this, providing resources at a real level to women who are struggling. And it doesn't have to be divorce, it doesn't have to be bankruptcy, but it could be easily.
But it could be. Yep.
And people don't, it's a lot of shame. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had groups that I've led for years. I'm talking over 20 years ago, I led a group, and the basis of that was bringing them into that group so they didn't have to feel shame in that space. And I still do that in everything I do, where it's a safe space for them to come together, or they can, a lot of people would come to me and no one else knew, because they didn't want
Yeah.
anyone to know that they needed to take medication, they were having this struggle, whatever it was. There's a lot of shame out there, which is the hustle mentality as well.
Yeah.
And secret, it's like, what's the one thing from when Harry, in the, the question of life, what's the one thing, right?
Yeah.
I think if
Yeah.
we can get a handle on what's most important to us and focus on that, we will not get wrapped up in that hustle, because the longer I go through this journey and let things go, the better things fall into place and are more in better alignment. Because the minute, and we've experienced this with Soul Quest, we gave it 110% all last year, and things are happening now that we're not there. We're not there physically, and I'm getting more requests for retreats than I have. Well, maybe not more, but a lot.
Yeah.
All to
Yeah.
say is
That's
that
amazing.
the hustle, well, more than even when we talked. And so there are things happening that we don't know. And this is what we talked about in our conversation. We don't know who's working on our behalf, who wants to work with us because they've been watching us for 3 years or longer,
Right.
or just really love what we're doing. We have to choose the perspective that we are doing good work. We know we're doing good work and feel compelled to continue that, because that's our life purpose. That's our life
Yeah.
purpose, and nothing else matters. Money will follow. Do you
Mm-hmm.
trust in the process? Are you, and that's, you're saying, like, let's
Mm-hmm.
decide what is in most alignment. And it is about money at some level. And so you have to say, okay, from a business perspective, what am I spending a lot of time on that's bringing me no return? And probably, like, let's be honest. I always say that
Yeah.
you're going to get the most out of your coaching and the more honest you are. So if you don't love something, don't do it, first of all.
Very true. Very true.
And even if you haven't made money in it yet, you're probably going to make the most money doing something you're most passionate about. So change lanes,
Mm-hmm.
and figure out how to make it happen. The most disheartening thing to me is seeing somebody who has a gift and is so talented and passionate in some area, and they choose to stay in a 9 to 5, or don't make the steps to do what they really truly want to do. That to me
Yep.
is the most sad situation.
It
And
is the
I'm
most sad,
okay.
but I do really
I
appreciate
get it.
your naming that shame is a big factor here, because I do think that's part of what we were, parsing apart is, am I listening to the programming and conditioning of society and its idea of what successfulness is, and feeling shame because I haven't met that caliber of goal? Or am I actually meeting a goal that I set out to have that that has a different set of rules that it abides by, right? And so you were really helping me to extricate, getting into shame spiral, and instead kind of linking it back to things that I'm feeling very confident about.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciated that. Like, your message was really about, if you're in this uncertainty, the uncertainty is going to come. It just is part of life. Like, let it go. Let go of, I'm going to get on the other side of this where I feel certain. And I teach that same thing. But the way that your strategy for that was really to anchor it into things that I already feel self-confident about, or feel like, yeah, I know that this is the stuff I know actually works. It works for me. It works for other people. I can feel good about putting that work product out into the world. And I don't have to do it at a level of, are you making this much while you're doing it? Are you selling this kind of product while you're doing it? Are you doing, like, none of that programming and conditioning of society or culture, business culture, any of that matters. It doesn't matter if what you're linking back to is what's important and what's the purpose of why you're doing this, and can it still fit in alignment while being pragmatic. I'm, as a single parent, like, while also making sure you're paying your bills. So, don't just go off onto la la land over here because it's all the fun stuff either. But, certainly don't do anything that's feeling awful to you or pulling you into that shame spiral.
I can say one of the things you asked, what have I thought about since we talked? And I will say one of the things that I wanted to say to you was, I was reflecting on our conversation, of course, a little bit. And I know how hard you worked and the money you've put into your programs, and they're fabulous. Your website looks awesome.
Thank you.
All your offerings, you've got so many free opportunities. I mean, people are getting so much value. Like, I don't have that much stuff out there. I give most of my stuff away, so maybe I do. But it looks great, and it is great. Like, your product, what you do is so valuable for people. I wish more people would seek you out and use it.
Are you feeling kind of blah about your life? You're a woman in midlife, and life is pretty good. I mean, you've got your stuff together. You've ticked all the boxes, but you just don't feel like you're stepping into your prime in the way that you'd really like to. And you certainly don't want to go down the road of having a midlife crisis in order to figure all of this out. So if that's you, then my 20-week group coaching program is for you. And guess what? I'm opening it up in 2024. So that's why I'm interrupting this podcast today, because I want to personally invite you to participate in this with me. That's right, another 20-week group coaching program. Now, 20 weeks seems like a big commitment. I get it. But I want you to know it's just once a week that we're meeting all together. And then there's the curriculum that's online that you do on your own time. And I spread it out over 20 weeks because I really want you to see change in your life. Now, here's the thing. It's pretty easy to find out more information about this. And guess what? You get to hear it from me, straight from me. All I want you to do is go over to learntoloveyourstory.com right now and click on Work With Me. And then you can set up a time to talk directly with me. I'm going to answer any of your questions, walk through what this program can give you, and really help you understand that I'm here to help you in 2024. I want you to reach your goals. I want you to really design the life that you want to be living. That is my passion, and it's what the 20-week program does. Now, doesn't that sound like something that you want to be doing? Now, remember, go to learntoloveyourstory.com right now, and you too can sign up for your complimentary call with me. All you have to do is click on Work With Me and book that complimentary call, or you can head over to resources and read a little bit more about the various programs that I have. I can't wait to have you be part of this in 2024. So, Happy New Year to you, and let's get you into that centered life the right way.
That being said, I think, and you're not alone, I've done the same thing, like 3 years of developing the product, and I'm constantly improving for myself. It has to be for ourselves first. If you're proud of that, the clients will come. But what I wanted to say was, I think there might have been a statement of, do I just throw in the towel? I mean, this is ridiculous, right? Like all this hustle mentality. But here's the reality. If we can allow ourselves to step back, go somewhere, which I know you've done, take a retreat, or, take a half an hour, whatever it takes, and look at it from the outside, or go talk to a friend that you trust and say, okay, what have I actually done? Like, make a to-done list, like you've accomplished all these things. But when you're feeling like, oh my gosh, why is this not working? How do you know it's not working? Because how long has it actually been active?
Yeah.
You've created, like, same as my products. I'm only going to come out with the whole program, maybe, hopefully it'll all be ready by Christmas. Should I quit the moment I release it? That's ridiculous. It's only, we're both just at the tip of the iceberg.
I know.
And if we can stay, here's the magic, is if we can stay in the moment and understand the reality is, while we have done years of work, spent lots of money, sweat and tears to get to here, the actual program hasn't really been there that long.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the truth. Success will follow.
Yeah, I think it will. And I think that your point is, true. Like, nobody ever tells you about the years that somebody puts their stuff together before it starts to take off. It's
I
like,
always looked at that.
it's like it was born on the day that people started to pay for it and forward, when in actuality, there's a lot more that goes into it. And so it's hard to name, is this working or not working? And that's why I say, I think that a lot of us get stuck in the social conditioning aspect of it. We get, like, the idea is there should be return on investment. It should look like this. At the end of the year, you should be able to show something for all of the work that you've put into that. And sometimes those arcs are longer than a year in business. Sometimes they're, several years.
We're on social media, maybe not constantly, but a lot more than a lot of us would like to admit. It's easy to see what appears to be instant success, unrealistic timelines. And most people are probably more in our shoes than the other way around. And that,
I agree.
It's like people who choose to not watch TV. Like, I don't watch a lot of news every day. I don't necessarily read the paper every day. Same reason.
Yep.
Because it gets in there and it makes you think, well, I should be able to do that. And that's a trap. So how do you, and that's where my creative wellness and what you do comes in handy, because we really need to slow down and just give ourselves a break, give ourselves some credit, and realize that we are on a good path. Most likely. And if you're not, there are people to help. So.
Right. And that's, I think, how you then anchor to the things you can feel confident about, instead of, if you're trying to anchor to uncertain things, that is where you start to drift and feel like ish, like it just doesn't feel right. You're grasping at things, trying to make it work. And that uncertainty really can drive some energy in a direction that's not productive for you. And it's certainly not, helpful at all to the person that's in that frenetic space of, oh my gosh, what do we do next?
Yeah. And when you're in that dark space, you really don't want to hear cliche statements and stuff like that. But we were talking about color, and I was talking about how, all the colors can provide energy and positive influence, but also then that statement of, life isn't just black and white. There's some people that go through life and say it either needs to be this or this. But the honest to God truth, and I know we agree on this, is that most of life happens in that gray area.
Yeah.
And while that's not comforting, the more we accept the gray area in times of change and uncertainty, the more at peace we can feel internally and within our souls, if you believe in soul.
Right.
And that's the whole goal, I think.
That is the whole goal.
I try to teach people how to feel that kind of peace. I mean, I've been in the ER for panic attacks. It's been a lot of years, thank goodness.
Yeah.
We all struggle with something, right? The anxiety in the world right now is real. And so to be able to get, yeah. So being
Yeah.
able to find a practice or someone to support you through it is a key thing right now. I truly believe that. And of course, I like to use art. That's my mode. And of course, music, I always suggest as well. All kinds of activities, meditations, whatever it takes, depending on the person, it's going to be something different. But to
Hmm.
create routines where you can help yourself get out of a funk when you're in it and feeling like life is just not where I want it to go. Well, guess what? We are it's up to us. Our
Yeah.
success and our mood and all of it, well, you can blame it on anybody, someone else all day long, but at the end of the day, it's really up to you.
Right. And I mean, I find comfort in that because it's really up to me and I really have 100% control over me. I don't have 100% over, these things you call gray, right? That are in the
Mm-hmm.
gray, uncertain space, but
Mm-hmm.
I do have 100% control of how do I show up to that gray.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, there's just comfort in, shifting my focus from out here, what is uncertain, to in here, what certainly do I have the capacity to do a different thing with. Does it
Mm-hmm.
mean it's going to change out here? No. And so I have to kind of release or detach myself from, the outcome will show me here if I'm doing it right in here. Instead, I have to like you were talking about, these practices or atomic habits that you're stacking. Part of it is I have to know me, and I have to know, did I do the thing that I needed to do for myself? Well, then
Right.
I'm killing it. I'm showing up 100%. Absolutely. I'm doing what I can do.
And my
Mm-hmm.
mom would always say, did you do your best today? It's a very simple question you can ask yourself. Did I do the things like you were saying? Did I do the things that I know I need to do for myself? And while you were talking, I was thinking, the general public, what do you do when you're feeling anxious or you're feeling like the job isn't going well or you don't like your life path? What do you choose to do with that? How are you going to move yourself out of that space of feeling like that? Because eventually it's going to get you to a not so great, even worse place
Yeah.
mentally. So,
Yeah.
what do you do to create a peace filled life?
Yeah.
And that sounds probably Pollyanna to most people, but honestly, where you're not feeling any sense of anxiety or disappointment in yourself, where do you feel really good about yourself? How do you
Yep.
get to that place? And that's why I created the Creative Wellness Journal that I will be releasing soon, because it teaches exactly what I've done myself for several years. And it took me a while. It's like I woke up one day and I said, all I need to do is teach this. It's like,
Yeah.
duh, right?
Yeah.
Because it works. And, you know, I don't need to explain it, but you need it, without trying it, you can't knock it, right? But
No.
it's not going to work for every person. But I do truly believe if people try it and practice it, if they have any kind of inclination to write, or they want to figure out solutions, they want a life path change, it's all inside of ourselves. And the way to get there, there's lots of different avenues, and this is one avenue that
Yeah.
I've created for myself that I know that works. And it's very surprising when you do it.
Yeah.
Like you can't you can't anticipate the outcome. That's what, like you're talking, it's like, talk about not letting that outcome go. When you journal, do art pages, when you take part in these activities I've created for goal setting or your mental health, even you will be surprised at what
Mm-hmm.
comes up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You will.
Because we don't take, it's that hustle mentality. It's the social media. It's life. It, when do you ever, like, seriously, how many people truly, if you're honest with yourself, how often do you sit down and actually think about what happened today? How happy am I? How can I change my life? I won't go into it, but we have a health condition situation, and it makes you rethink everything.
It
You're,
does. It
we're,
does.
it's the C word. We're dealing with cancer here in our household, and it's serious. It's not just stage 1. We're at stage 3B. It's not 4, thank God, but we're right in the middle. We're in the trenches, and life is passing by regardless of our health. So if you're in good health, get out there and do the things you love to do, because you don't know when you're going to get that diagnosis. Not totally positive, but it could happen. I mean,
But it could
anything.
happen.
It could
What
be
I'm hearing you say, though, is that the habit to form is, instead of looking at what isn't going well in your
right.
life and continuing to beat yourself up about it, to show up in this really self-compassionate way and ask yourself, did you do your best? What went well today? What did you do today towards this life of loving your life a little bit more, instead of that tendency that we've been programmed to have, where we're focused on where are we not meeting the muster.
Yeah.
And that creates self-limiting behavior and belief about oneself. But to flip it over, and your creative techniques always do this, right? Because they're tapping into a whole part of our brain, the right side of our brain, that isn't logical and isn't putting things together because it's 1 + 1 = 2, but rather because, A reminded me of apple, and then apple reminded me of red, and red, like it goes all over the place, right? So there's this beauty in just the very simple habit of getting centered in yourself, and then asking yourself what is okay, what is well, what do you like about your life, and what are you doing towards this newer life that you really want to be seeing. What did you do today that's in service to that? Then be happy about that. Then celebrate that. Not because you're there today, but because you did the thing today that you needed to do to get there eventually.
And I would like to, like with our cancer journey, I did work with my husband to create a body map and work through that process. And I would like to say that I can work with people on that, because it is serious. Visualizing the positive, visualize healing. And while it may not cure you, it can. I do believe we have the power to do that with the higher power, of course, as well, in your faith, if you believe. But even regardless of that, I think we have the power within us, in our mind and our body, to heal ourselves. And the art component is, like Natalie was saying, is you get into this beautiful space of, I was thinking of a practice I learned called neurographica. And what that is basically drawing lines. And it sounds crazy, but it's actually been proven in Russia, and it's actually been certified, and it's a real science. And as you're drawing these lines, you can resolve an issue you're having. I've released headaches doing it.
Wow, that's fascinating.
It is so, it's things I never would have considered myself. So this is not like, oh, I do all these crazy things. It's not, it's real. Your brain is an amazing organ. And you can literally put your pen to paper and try to detach yourself from what the pen is doing. This sounds crazy, but I could, I know how to teach people how to do that. But it's as simple as even putting that pen on the paper and slowly drawing a line and thinking about what it is that you're frustrated about, or maybe it's your headache. And it's this whole series, this process, this art making process. It's not really art, but you can reprogram the synapses in your brain with these kind of activities. I've learned it's amazing. It's so amazing.
It's amazing. It really is.
Every little thing we do, right? Like every little thing we do can improve our well-being, our lives.
And the thing that we know in neuroscience is, if you're gonna learn a new skill, it takes about somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 250 repetitions in your logical side of your brain and your left side of your brain to really learn a new thing. But what we also know to be true, and why play therapy is such a powerful thing even for adults when we use these different modalities, is play actually allows us to learn stuff in about 50 repetitions or less.
Much faster.
It depends on how good you are at doing that, but because it's engaging the right brain, and then bilaterally because you're associating that with some new logical thing that you're also learning, it just gets embedded in your neural pathway so much quicker than if you're just trying to repeat it to yourself logically over and over and over. So, you know, this is why atomic habits and habit stacking also can be really useful, because if you're just doing the behavior, there is a play aspect to that, right? Like you're embodying what you're wanting to put into practice. And so it just over time solidifies into your neural pathways a lot quicker, and you'll start to benefit from it a lot faster.
I've been thinking about it a lot. Like when you think of the creative flow, and, you know, when we had our conversation, you had that kind of things stuck there. Like, I don't know how to get it moved. And so a lot of these activities, you talk about, you get in that flow. It's like you can like imagine a block in the middle of your brain that can't move. And so as you do some of these art practices and you're shutting down the clutter, the voices, I mean, we're not, you know, the so-called voices, the clutter,
the internal voice. I mean, we do have internal dialogue.
Like, I need to clean up the dishes. I need to take out the trash. I need to go do XYZ for work. I need to write this paper, this article. I'm going to be on a podcast. All these things are constant. When do we stop? And so that block forms because you can't get past it because nothing is working. So then you sit down and you do this art activity that I've created, these exercises, and slowly the block starts to dissolve. And if you can quiet it down, whether it's morning pages, whether it's art pages, whether it's neurographica, whether it's just putting paint on paper, some other exercises, or an easy one for people to think of is a coloring sheet. So take a coloring sheet, you start coloring, you sit there for 15 minutes and a half an hour, and guess what? Totally dissolves. And bonus, you might have actually figured out what you should do next, because the solution comes to you in that moment. You let your logical brain quiet. A lot of people don't like the whole idea where people say, empty your brain and we'll, you know, have this peaceful blah, blah, blah. No, it's not about emptying your brain. It's about quieting it enough so you can hear what you need to hear from yourself.
Yes. Or you can at least, that those other intuitions can come up and arise in your conscious awareness, where they're staying well below your conscious awareness if your loud logical self is really hollering at you in that self-limiting old. Honestly, it's not even necessarily always self-limiting, but it's always an old program. Right? It's the stuff you've always done. And the brain only knows how to keep playing that old tape to date ourselves, but it only knows how to do that old program. And so if you can't get it to shift with some other activity, then it won't quiet. You won't be able to hear what other intuitive wisdom that your body mind could come up with for you.
And I don't know if it might have been you that said that. I mean, a year or two ago was one of the biggest things for me, a revelation of like, I can't really see a different outcome if I haven't had a certain experience. I can't imagine something else. And to me, that's been very life-changing in the sense that just because I have not experienced a good relationship or had a 6-figure job, I can't picture what my life would be like with something so awesome, whatever that is. Or I've never been, well, I have traveled a lot, but you know, a lot of great things. Some people, you can't imagine it. That doesn't mean we can't experience it. And so my challenge to myself has been like, how do I change my mindset to accept good things, like really good things beyond what our stories have told us that aren't not necessarily true. Just because they happen to us doesn't mean that's the way we have to continue living our life, which that was another conversation we had.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But we have to believe enough that just because we've had this experience doesn't mean we can't have this better experience.
That's right. And you can't get it, you can't create it on old maps or old programs in your brain. And so you're going to have to empty or quiet that brain so that you can allow space to experientially learn what this new thing is, and then start formulating a new way of feeling and being and, showing up in the world.
I think for me, I use the word retrain in a way, like retrain the brain, or just train it and manifest the power of manifesting, believing, like the body map for healing, believing the tumor is shrinking, writing out all those old stories. Actually, Dean did that on the body map when we got the diagnosis before his surgery on his knee, because his knees are in pain. Without going into it, he wrote out all these things, all these hurts, all these old wounds. And over top of those wounds were papers that he wrote affirmations and positive thoughts. So that is what is on top. And those that's the power you can choose to have, is staying positive and healing yourself slowly by letting go of the past. And that's also with Soul Quest. Our labyrinth allows that as a practice. That's where all these different things are part of my program now. I never would have thought, again, this is where we talk about, you don't know what's going to happen back here, but 3-4 years later or 10 years later, all of a sudden it becomes revealed that there was a purpose in the path that you were on. And this Mark pointed out to us over the weekend, maybe you're preparing it for someone else. And that's okay too, because that could be a gift.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And it's just being open-minded, open-hearted for yourself and for others, because what is your purpose? For me anyway, is the big part of my heart is to serve others through everything I create and give them something that they're not giving themselves enough of, most likely.
Yeah.
And if that's what happens,
so be it.
Job well done.
Yeah, exact. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
I love that.
Same.
Exactly.
That's why we're friends.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for being on. Is there anything that you want us to make sure that my listeners know is coming up for you? I know you talked about a lot of that in the very beginning, but anything that you want my listeners to be aware of that's happening in your neck of the woods? And of course, all those links I will have in the podcast notes as well.
Yeah, as soon as I have it all ready to order and done, I'm so excited. I'm like itching to get back to Tucson, where I can get these all just wrapped up and on. The exciting news is they should all be available through Amazon. So easier and easier. So soon, in a couple of weeks.
Soon. Great. Well, I am excited. I'm excited actually to order my journal. Now that I got to edit the journal, I'm excited to actually get one.
Right.
Oh, I am so excited about that. That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was really a pleasure to get to host you, and you'll have to come back sometime, because we always love to hear wisdom that comes from the right side of our brains, instead of, where we get so dominant on the left side.
Do we need an affirmation?
Yeah, let's do one. I am enough.
This is the
I can't read it.
It says, I am shifting my perspective to focus on gratitude. And this is one of the red affirmations.
Oh, I love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much. All right.
My pleasure.
Because I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, I have to make sure at the end of each of these episodes that I give you the disclaimer that none of the material that I talk about in these podcasts is meant to replace any kind of therapy or formal medical or mental health treatment. And in fact, anything that I offer on my website, my coaching programs, any kind of psychoeducational materials that I release are not a replacement for that level of care. So just take that into account when you listen. This is information for you, and hopefully you find it of value, both as an educational tool and for your entertainment. And I also want to mention that if anyone you know is in a mental health crisis, needs additional help, I always include these two crisis resources. They're available to anybody. Pick up the phone and dial 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And you can always visit their website at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Additionally, there's actually a crisis text line. So if you're not somebody that likes to pick up the phone, text HOME to 741-741 to the crisis text line. And you can find them online at crisistextline.org. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and I hope that you like and follow me wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe consider leaving me a review. It always helps me to keep this podcast relevant when I know what you want to hear about.